There is a pretty significant pandemic that has been going on well before 2020. In fact, this pandemic has been happening from the very beginning of time. Our culture now especially sees it being contagious, and you know you have this disease if you've ever had this general sense that something is missing in your life. And we will try to medicate or find solutions for this disease by looking online and trying to find things on Amazon to fill the gap, but it doesn't work. This disease might cause you to walk into your closet and feel like you have nothing to wear, or to walk into your garage and see your two-car garage and think you need a newer model of a car, that would fix it. We think this disease is going to be treated with something new. We try to medicate it with something more, but it never seems to be enough. The disease is the disease of discontentment. It's this idea that if I had a little bit more, if I could get the next thing, the upgraded, then that would satisfy, that would solve my problem. The Apostle Paul addresses this to his young mentee, Timothy, in 1 Timothy 6. Paul is writing and he says, "But godliness with contentment is of great gain." Godliness and seeking first the kingdom of heaven, aligning my life with the things of spiritual matters, aligning my life with the kingdom things, with Jesus things, and contentment is of great gain. It's not just a good thing, it's a great thing. And here's why: because it shifts my perspective to what matters most. It shifts my perspective from the things that I'm trying to attain and collect and get, and it shifts my perspective to eternal things. It's why he goes on and says, "For we brought nothing into this world, and we cannot take anything out of this world." Godliness with contentment, it's really important because it gives us an eternal perspective to realize I didn't bring anything into the world and I'm not going to take anything with me when I leave this world. Harvard University in 2018, they published a study where they interviewed 4,000 multimillionaires. And they asked them 3 questions. 4,000 multimillionaires, and they get these 3 questions across to them. They said this: how much do you have? How many millions upon millions of dollars do you have? Let's start there. Okay, great. Now that we have that, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? And then the last question they asked was, how much more will it take for you to get to a 10? The answers were pretty telling. For the how much more would you need to be at a 10 of happiness, they had different options. 10 times more, 5 times more, 2 times more. The most common answer, regardless of how many millions of dollars these people had, the most common answer was 10 times what they already had. Second to that was 5 times more than what they had. And out of the 4,000 people surveyed, only 13% said, "No, I have enough to be happy." The study's kind of crazy for us because most of us would think, if I had that kind of money, I'd be pretty happy. In fact, maybe some of you in this room, many of you in this room, might actually have that kind of money. And you hear the stats on a story like that, and you're like, yep, I've been there, I've done that, I've chased it, I've gone after it, and I'm still not happy, I'm still not satisfied. See, if you're not satisfied now, there isn't much reason to think you'd be satisfied then. Most of us think, well, if I have at least twice as much as I have now, then I'd be happy. But it's a moving target, so we're always taking aim. See, I get twice as much, and then I just want twice as much more. And when I get that, I just want a little bit more. And we chase after in this world, we chase after in this life just a little bit more, thinking that if I attain it, I'll be happy. So if money doesn't equal happiness, what does? We've been in a series called Real Simple, looking at some simple but not always easy teachings from Jesus and how we are to build our life around the things that matter most. We've looked at our priorities, we've looked at our schedule and how we invest our time, and today we're going to be talking about our stuff. the stuff that we fill our homes with, the stuff that we fill our cars with, the stuff we fill our bank accounts with, the stuff we fill our lives with, and how we can align our stuff and our finances with Jesus. And wherever you are on the scale of wealth or wanting and discouragement, hear me, this message is not a message of shame for you, but instead it's to show you a better and more simple way that Jesus teaches us. See, Jesus would spend so much of his time modeling and teaching, look, life is going to be hard. Life is going to feel overwhelming. It's going to be complex. You're going to have times where you never feel like you have enough, but it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, Jesus even invited people to lay down some things, to leave behind some things that they valued most so that they could follow him. It was a simpler way. Jesus taught on simplicity. He commended simplicity. And when he saw other people prioritizing and having the right perspective, he honored them and lifted them up. And again, we see Jesus saying, don't let your value, don't let your identity, your worth be determined by what you have or what you do. Don't think that you're going to feel more complete or feel more happy based on your station or situation in life. Instead, live with eternity in mind. Godliness and contentment. To recognize you didn't bring anything in and you can't take anything out of this world. See, here's the point. It's not about what stuff I have, it's about what stuff has me. It's not about what my house is filled with or what my bank account is filled with. It's how those things dig their claws into me and shape and define and control me. See, the test of stuff is whether it makes you proud or whether it makes you grateful. Look at how much I have. Look at how accomplished I've become versus I just can't believe how God has allowed me to have what I have. I just don't deserve it. In other words, does your accumulation of stuff make you think that you're something? Does your sense of worth come from what you have or what you say or what you wear or what you drive? Does it define how you feel about you, or does it make you grateful? When was the last time you pulled around the corner about to park in your driveway, looking at your house and just thought, God, thank you for my house? When was the last time you expressed gratitude for the things that God has given you? See, a lot of us would say, no, I know I'm not better than any others. I'm really grateful. And that's good. But the teachings of Jesus tell us the test of gratitude is generosity. Throughout his life, throughout his ministry, what we continue to see Jesus teaching is that the test of gratitude is generosity. The bigger question is, does all of my stuff make me generous? Or does it just make me want a little bit more? In Luke chapter 21, we see a simple story about a simple woman with a simple gesture of generosity. If you've got your Bible, turn to Luke 21. And Jesus holds this up as an example of what we are talking about today. And there wasn't anything special about this woman. She was, by all intents and purposes, probably ignored and unseen by most people around her. As you're turning to Luke chapter 21 in your Bible, and if you don't have a Bible, I'd love to give you one today after the service. You can even pull it up on the Bible app. But let me set the stage. Jesus is outside the temple where the people would gather to worship and where they'd gather for teaching. And outside of the temple, they'd have these containers, these bronze bowls, these different offering collection boxes. And people would walk by and they would put their offering in there. And everyone else around, it was almost a spectacle. I mean, they didn't have TV, so this was their entertainment, right? They'd go to temple and they'd watch people put money in a box. And they would watch how much. And because they didn't have paper money back then, they just had coins. They'd carry it around in sacks like this, and they would come to the temple and they'd be like, hey, check me out. I'm going to bring the noise. Right? And so people would be around just watching. Woo! That guy brought the noise. You hear all that? Let's see if this next guy can beat it. I mean, it was this spectacle of wealth and pride. So they're outside the temple, and Jesus sees what everyone is noticing in the first century as they come and give their offerings. I wonder if that's where the phrase, they're going to bring the noise, comes from. The offering, bring the noise. I don't think it's where it came from, but it'd be cool if it was. This was common practice outside the temple. People demonstrating how much God must love them because of how much money, how much noise they can make, right? What we're about to discover is that the noise of heaven, or the noise that heaven hears, is much different than the noise that we listen to. This is true when it comes to our generosity and to our giving. It's true when it comes to our relational investments. It's true when it comes to our worship, which many of you should be happy about. Because some of you are like, look, I don't sing, I don't have a good voice. God doesn't care. He said, make a joyful noise, not a pretty noise. Because the sound that heaven hears is different than the sound that your neighbor hears. So be like, I don't care what they think. I'm singing for an audience of one. And God thinks I'm beautiful and I sound beautiful. Because he's looking for a joyful noise, right? I like it. So Jesus, verse 1, looked up and he saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. And he saw a poor widow put 2 small copper coins. Wait, there was something moving. Hold on, I don't want you to miss that. He saw a widow putting 2 small copper coins. Sounds a little different, doesn't it? To the crowd looking on, insignificant. I mean, what's that? Nobody saw that. Nobody heard that. It was so faint, so insignificant. He said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more in than all of them combined. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty put in all that she lives on. See, Jesus is telling us something that's true even though it doesn't feel true. What do you mean, Jesus? What do you mean she put in more than everybody else? She only put in, that last guy, he brought the noise. All she brought was, clearly they all put in more. No, he says, for they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty put in all that she has to live on. No one notices this woman's 2 coins, but the noise was deafening to Jesus. Notice it says he saw. See, throughout the Gospels, throughout Jesus' ministry, we see this phrase, he saw. It wasn't he happened to catch or get a glance of it. No, it meant that he was watching, he was observing, he was seeing. And so if you think about it for a moment, as they are giving their gifts to God, the Son of God is watching. This may surprise us because I think we may feel like God isn't often paying attention to us or seeing me or what I say or what I do or what I give, but clearly he sees. Clearly he's paying attention. And throughout Jesus' life, he shares and teaches using examples of the things that he saw, of the things he observed, of what he was watching. And what's fascinating about that is we see Jesus teaching more about money than any other subject in all of the Bible. Isn't that crazy? Why would he talk about money more than prayer? Why would he talk about money more than heaven? Why would he talk about our finances and our resources more than salvation? It's because Jesus understood what the Bible constantly portrays, and it's this: money is God's chief competition. Not that God's actually in competition with anything, like he is in control, but money is the thing. that we tend to pursue and seek after and attain more of instead of seeking and pursuing and trying to get more of Jesus. Money is the thing that distracts us and puts us in competition with God. Money is the thing that constantly holds us up. The majority of the things that draw our attention away from God are caused by money and wealth. It's why Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mount, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve both God and money. He's not saying you shouldn't serve two masters. He's saying you can't do it. You have to decide who you will serve, what you will serve. This was and still is the primary competition for our hearts, and the reason is that money promises to do for us what only God can do. Money promises significance. Money promises worth. Money promises satisfaction and contentment. Money promises peace, security, even purpose. It's kind of like being thirsty and going into the fridge and grabbing a Coke and drinking that and thinking that it's going to quench your thirst. It might for a moment, but it won't last. It's not hydrating you like water does. Why do we continue to feel discontent and never satisfied, always hungry for more? It's because the Coke will wet my mouth, but it won't quench my thirst. Money may get me what I want, but it'll never satisfy what my soul needs. Only Jesus does that. And so we have this woman who gives more than anyone else, even though she only gives 2 small coins. There's another story I want to highlight for us just really quick. Mark chapter 10, verse 17. You can even just jot that down and check it out in depth more later. But here we see a young, wealthy man. The kind of guy that would have come and made the noise around the temple. He comes to Jesus asking how to satisfy his soul, how to quench the soul thirst and eternity of his life. And after promoting his accomplishments and all his good behavior, Jesus looks at him with love and compassion. And in verse 21, Jesus just says, one thing you lack. Look, you've done all these good things, but one thing you lack. Go and sell all of your possessions and give them to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Come, follow me. But it says that the man was deeply dismayed by these words. He was crushed. And he went away grieving, for he was a man who owned much property. One story, we see a woman who gives everything she has and is exalted in the eyes of God. He honors her. And here we have a man who is seeking and longing for eternal life. And Jesus says, look, sell everything you have. See, Jesus knew the one thing that this man had was the disease that many of us struggle with, the disease of discontentment. This man had made his wealth, he had made money his God, and he was unwilling to give it up. The point was not how much this man had. It wasn't how wealthy he was or how much stuff he had, but how much his stuff had a grip on him, that he was so unwilling to let it go, to pursue that which matters most. See, I wonder if this is the reason that God often portrays money in the Bible like a test. Throughout the Old Testament, when they would capture a new city, the people of God, and he would say, no, leave the spoils, don't take them. It was a test. What were they trusting in? What were they seeking after? What were they wanting? It's why in Luke 12:34, Jesus says, where your money is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What you elevate as important will be a reflection of the condition of your heart. It's not a test of your salvation, but it's a test of your affections. It's a test of what you trust in. See, our money tells a story of our hearts, how we use it, how we utilize it. So back to the story in Luke 21, Jesus is watching, and this woman, and he compares the hearts of the people giving, not the contents of what they give. He's not condemning the wealthy. Let me just point that out. Jesus isn't condemning those bringing the noise. But he is commending the woman who brought her gift. This poor widow has given more than all of them because what she gave was different. It's not really right. Jesus, no. She gave the least amount actually. Until you realize that Jesus defines more differently than we define more. See, if you own everything, what does more look like? If you own it, if it's yours, then what does more look like? We think more is that which we don't have. We got to get more of it. But God owns everything. So if you own everything, more doesn't quite look the same, does it? Because it's already yours. Psalm 24 verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it." So you tell me, what is it on this earth or in this universe that God does not own? What is it that you have control of that God does not? According to Psalm 24, absolutely nothing. The earth is the Lord's. All of creation, everything that you have in your house, in your bank account, in your pockets that you're wearing, it is all his. He owns it all. And this is the foundational understanding when it comes to my money and my stuff, that in God's eyes, it's not yours. It's not yours. There is so much freedom in the simple understanding of money and stuff when we understand it doesn't belong to us. And if that's true, then it helps some of the decisions we have to make really simple. Think of it this way. If I came up to you and I gave you $100 and I said, I want you to give this to someone that actually needs it. I want you to take this and I want you to find someone in need and give it to them. And if you actually did the experiment and didn't pocket it and be like, ha, sucker, I'm the one in need. If you actually took the money and you went and found someone in need and you gave it to them and someone came up to you and said, hey, was that hard? You'd say, no. It wasn't hard. It wasn't mine to begin with. I was asked to give it away. And so I did it. It didn't cost me anything. And this idea really simplifies the complexity of how we look at stuff. How much we stress, how much we strive after something that really isn't ours. How much time you spend chasing, pursuing, climbing the ladder, trying to get more when it's not yours to begin with. God simply says, no, it's mine. Everything in this world is mine. I'm just letting you have it for a little while. And here's what I want you to do with it. Live with a perspective about your stuff that it's not yours, that it's mine. And I've just entrusted you with it for a little while. Jesus says this widow gave more because he defines more not by portion, but by proportion. It wasn't the amount of her offering, but the amount of her sacrifice that mattered to Jesus. Listen to me, church, it's not the amount that you give. It's the amount of sacrifice. It's what does it cost me? Here at Heritage, we say that we're a blessing, or that we are blessed to be a blessing to others. That the things that God gives us, we want to pour back out into our community and pour back out into this world to advance the cause and kingdom of Jesus Christ. That we are blessed to be a blessing, and when it comes to generosity, it's not equal gifts, it's equal sacrifice. Which is why at Heritage Church, more than 10% of our overall budget goes outside of the walls of our individual campuses or churches. It goes back into the communities, into mission organizations, and around the world to missionaries to advance the cause and kingdom of Jesus Christ. It's not about equal gifts, it's about equal sacrifice. Not portion, but proportion to what God has entrusted you with. See, here's what the Bible makes clear. When God's people pass this test, When we see our stuff and our finances through the right lens, through the lens of God's sovereignty, through the lens of gratitude, through the lens of proportionally being generous, God sees it and he blesses it. This is simply our stuff. When we see it through the eyes of Jesus, it helps everything get real simple. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but it puts everything in a right perspective and simplifies the things that we have. It's simple but not easy. And if you're anything like me, you've been trying to figure out, how am I an exception to this spiritual rule? The truth is we're going to be tempted to drink the Coke. To wet our mouths for a moment, but never satisfy or quench the thirst. The Coke won't satisfy you. It won't give you the peace. The money that you're pursuing, the next raise, the accomplishments, it's not going to give you the peace or security or contentment that you're hoping for. So what I encourage you to do is seek Jesus, seek his heart. That you would steward the stuff that he's given you well. With it through a different lens, through a different perspective. Lay it before the Lord. Trust him with it. Test him. Follow his plan and see if he just doesn't show up and prove himself to be faithful. See, the test of gratitude is generosity. The test of generosity is sacrifice. The test of gratitude is how generous I am. It shows how thankful I am. But the test of that generosity is the level of sacrifice. What does it cost me to be able to give this? We look at two people today. A woman whose generosity was evident through her sacrifice. Her life was defined not by what she had, but by what she gave away. And then a young man, a wealthy young man, whose life was defined by the things that he was unwilling to part with. The things that ultimately kept him from the eternal life that he sought after. One gave everything she had and was given everything that God had. The other held tightly to their stuff and walked away empty-handed. Which one will you be? Which perspective will you have? How will you simplify your stuff and your life? See, if you're anything like me, and we're more alike than you think, one of the hardest principles to trust God with is when it comes to trusting God with my finances. I want to live generously. I want to have a heart of contentment, but I so often live to accumulate for myself as much as I can. But here's the thing, when I die, I can't take it with me. When I die, it's given away. So the question to ask myself is, what is my sacrifice in this life going to look like? What does sacrifice for me look like? What does sacrifice for you look like? Not equal gifts, equal sacrifice. Because it's not really generosity to give it all away when I'm gone and I don't need it anymore. I want to live my life to make a difference now, not when I'm gone. So which one will you be? I want to ask for 2 volunteers. One of you has to be willing and able to climb a ladder. Come on, 2 volunteers, or I'm just going to point at people. Come on. We got one. Come on, Dave. I picked Dave because, he won't be embarrassed by it. I could have called out someone that, this is their first time. That would have been really funny. They'd never come back, but it would have been funny for a moment. Dave, do me a favor. Can you just hop up on this ladder, just that first rung? Danielle, you just hang out here for a second. So Dave, this ladder represents our life. And in our 20s and in our 30s and in our 40s and climbing the ladder of life. And there always seems to be another step to take to achieve and to get more. Go ahead and climb the ladder a little bit and get up there 1 or 2 more. Yeah, it should be all right. Dave knows how to climb a ladder. There we go. So and always more. always the next thing, always trying to accomplish. It just seems to never stop. And that's one way, that's, for most of us, maybe how we navigate our life. Would you do me a favor and just take a knee? What if we had a different posture? Where we started our days kneeling. Where I don't have to climb the ladder and I pray and I ask God and say, look, I don't need to chase after more. I don't need the stuff. I don't need the success. I'm going to seek you first. I'm going to simplify my life. I'm going to let you lead. You get the picture? You tell me, which of these two is more likely to fall? It's so obvious you don't even need to answer, right? But hopefully that's sinking in a little bit. I can spend my whole life trying to climb and get the next thing and get the next thing, but what happens when the rung breaks? What happens when I miss a step? What happens when it doesn't fulfill what I've been trying to achieve? How far will I fall? To realize it was never mine to begin with. What if I started on my knees and said, God, I don't need any of that. You give me what you think I need, and I'll give you all of me. I'll let you lead my life. Dave, thanks. You guys can go ahead and take a seat. How will you respond to navigating this life, to navigating the challenges, to navigating your stuff? Godliness with contentment is of great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing with us when we leave. Which one will you be? Will you continue to complicate life, organizing your life on the next step and the next achievement and the getting a little bit more, trying to find the satisfaction that Jesus says, look, get on your knees and depend on me, so I will supply all your needs. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. It's really simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Would you pray with me? And before I pray, as your heads are bowed, I just want you to process for a moment what God is saying to you. What area of life you have been prioritizing, how you have been living your life to get more, to achieve, to climb the ladder. And maybe you found that it just doesn't satisfy like you thought it would. That happiness isn't found in the more. It's found in Jesus. That satisfaction and purpose is not found in accomplishing. It's found in surrendering to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That Jesus is enough. That you could offer me everything in this world. In fact, I could gain the whole world, but for what if I lose my soul? What will you prioritize? What will you live for? God, give us eyes to see through your perspective. To live a life of generosity through sacrifice. Understanding that all that I have, I've been entrusted with by you, that you are the owner and I'm the steward. Would we steward it well? In Jesus' name, amen.